In Myrtle Beach, you always go at your own pace. Lie out on the sand, lie out by the pool, go boogie boarding, go surfing, walk the boardwalk, walk the marsh walk, golf at one of 90 golf courses, mini golf at one of 50 mini golf courses, fish off a pier, fish from a chartered boat, go shopping, get drinks, eat the freshest seafood. The list is exhaustive, but the experience isn't. You can go all out or do nothing at all. How you relax is up to you. There is so much to do and explore, whether you're traveling with friends, family, or just yourself. With 60 miles of beach, you're going to find your place. If this sounds like what you need, then this is where you belong.
Twisted Tea and Myrtle Beach wholesaler Better Brands Incorporated. Know our consumers enjoy relaxing days on the water with Twisted Tea's original hard iced tea in hand. It's important to remember drink and boat responsibly. Choose to be or designate a sober skipper before leaving the dock. Do it for your family and your friends, your passengers, and everyone else on board. Twisted Tea salutes all sober skippers who take the pledge. Cheers, and we'll see you on the water.
Realtree has always had a connection to the fishing industry and the outdoor lifestyle. In 2016, Realtree expanded on the traditional business of creating the world's most effective camouflage patterns to create a fishing brand and family of patterns designed to connect the woods to the water and strengthen the bond between the two worlds. We couldn't be more excited to be working with the industry's top brands, retailers, and anglers to continue our growth, and we hope that you will join us. Enjoy Realtree fishing patterns inshore, offshore, on the lake, or at the dock. Learn more about the extensive line Realtree fishing patterns, apparel, gear, and more at Realtree.com. Trilogy Outdoors.
All right, folks, welcome back to Trilogy Outdoors, and we are once again in the Trilogy Outdoors podcast studio here at Senator Goldfinch's house, and we are joined by a couple guests in the studio who know a lot about what we're going to talk about today. And by the way, Stephen, great call on lining up who we're going to talk with today, because I don't want to. I mean, I'm not going to toot their own horn. They can do it themselves, but it's probably the most popular bait out there. I mean, overall, across the whole tackle industry, the word Z-Man is infamous now.
So I actually, when we decided to do this show, I'm the least organized fisherman you know. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'd love to say that I'm not, but I really am. And the way I organize my offshore stuff from my inshore stuff is different 5-gallon buckets full of bait.
Okay, join the crowd.
Right. So I went and I basically turned over my 5-gallon bucket of inshore baits to see what I had in there, because sometimes you just don't, like, you grab stuff that looks good and you don't even recognize the name sometimes, right? And I started looking, and I counted at least 8 blue tabs on the top Z-Man.
Yep.
Right. I mean, Z-Man, and maybe 2 or 3 others, but Z-Man 2 to 1, maybe 3 to 1 in my tackle box, which is my 5-gallon bucket.
That's right. You live by an organized tackle box. This guy's got he's organized.
Do you organize, Jason?
He's ridiculous. For a charter captain, I almost puke every time I look at his organization.
Well, I love organization. I just can't do it.
See, my wife's like, I don't understand. Like, why can't you organize other things like you do in fishing? And I'm not OCD about a lot of things, but you know what I mean. When a big school of fish or something pops up, you don't want to be, where's this? So I'm definitely super organized when it comes to my baits.
So interesting you said that. And aside though, so I can spot a redfish, pushing, with the 3 wakes. I can spot a redfish pushing. I can spot a dolphin on the water from 100 yards away in bad light. I can spot a buck in a thick snowstorm from 100 yards away.
Learned that this week.
Walking through sagebrush. I cannot find a pin or a key in a drawer that's right in front of me. And my wife will tell me that every time. It's right in front of you. Why can't you see it? I don't know why I can't see it. You can see a buck from 1,000,000 yards away.
Yep.
Yes, I can.
That's right.
But I can't see the key right there in front of me.
Yeah, the old, why don't you use this till you find it?
Yeah.
There you go.
Every time.
Exactly.
It's right where you left it. That's where it is. Well, I'll tell you what, you've lined up a great guest today, and we've talked about this. We wanted to talk about Z-Man for a while.
We have.
You had the pleasure of going to college with Jonathan Zucker.
Yeah, Jonathan and I got our MBAs together. He's a great guy, and, when Z-Man came on, he and I, had a discussion about getting together a couple times, and he's hooked me up now with Daniel Nussbaum, who is the CEO or president of ZMAN. Daniel is a great guy and knows a lot about this industry, and we're proud to have him on the show today. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks for having me, Senator and English. Appreciate it.
Man, it's great to have you on board. And you know, I know I was tooting your horn, tooting Z-Man's horn, but it's amazing. And I'm just going to real quick start out is the fact that my tackle boxes for the river and inshore for artificial, it's amazing how many baits overlap. And it's amazing how many are Z-Man products. I mean, it's unbelievable. But you guys have some of the you have one of the most incredible, diverse lines of tackle I have seen out of anybody. No doubt about it.
Well, I appreciate that. It's definitely evolved and grown a lot in recent years. I think we've added probably about 15 new products a year for the last 10 years. So it's really ballooned, and our goal is to offer something for every angler out there, fresh or salt, and we're slowly getting there.
I'm admittedly a offshore fanatic. I do love inshore fishing when it's hot, but I mean, I'm an offshore fanatic, and I was sitting here looking at what looks like, I don't know, let me see what they're called. They're called the Mag Swims, 10x tough. I love Z-Man because of their, the toughness. You can use the same bait over and over and over again without it getting worn out. But I'll tell you what I've really gotten into lately, at least in my mind. I haven't had a chance to fish them a whole lot, but in my mind, I have really gotten into sword fishing.
Yep.
And and I'm doing my best to make every attempt to get out there and to catch one on an artificial. And there are some other companies that make great artificials for sword fishing. You put a big skirt in front of it. I'm looking forward to using a Z-Man product. And this one, this Mag Swims is almost big enough, I think, where you could put a skirt in front of it and use it for a swordfish.
Yeah, the one to check out, we make a bait called the Heroes. It's a 10-inch bait, a straight tail bait. And there's some guys down in Louisiana, a couple of the captains down there with the Mexican Gulf Fishing Company.
Oh, I know Billy in that crowd. Yeah, they're good guys.
Great guys. I've been fortunate enough to fish with them a few times, but they use that 10-inch Heroes for daytime sword fishing. Put a skirt over it, and they've had some pretty impressive catches. So, while we are primarily an inshore and freshwater company, we do have plenty of products that kind of cross over into offshore, and a lot of folks rig that 10-inch Heroes as a dredge bait. Which that's where the durability really comes into play. A buddy of mine was over in Mag Bay in Mexico working on a big boat, and I think they caught something like 1,500 striped marlin over a couple of weeks and didn't have to change out a single bait on their dredges. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I mean, but the offshore fishery, I mean, they tear up baits so easily, and the artificials that I've used on sword fishing in the past, I mean, you get maybe 2 bites out of it, and then the tail's ripped off. Same thing with, deep dropping. We've got a fantastic deep drop fishery here off South Carolina, fishing in 500 to 1,000 feet of water. And, you're just constantly going through squid and cut bait, constantly going through it, and they're ripping it off and they're tearing it to pieces. And this is the kind of stuff, I mean, as tough as this stuff is and as good as it looks, this kind of stuff you could use for really kind of any kind of offshore fishing.
Yeah, it works great just for, like you said, deep dropping, or we got a lot of guys that are using it for bottom fishing closer in for, sea bass, snapper, whether you're jigging, or we do a line of scented baits. It's infused with a natural scent made by a company called Procure. And, you put one of those scented baits on there, and you're not going to get pecked to death by the sea bass and grunts and stuff like that. So, or you put it on a big, we make jig heads up to 3 ounces, and I've caught a lot of nice fish, even grouper, jigging those plastics, something a lot of people don't think of using them for.
I'm going to give it a shot. I'm looking forward to it. To me, that's exciting. It's a different way. Everybody's looking for, everybody in my circle, I guess I should say, we've got really big, from what, my travels, I can tell, we've got a huge snowy grouper population off of South Carolina, and 1 out of every 10 is 20 plus pounds, I'd say.
Yep.
And every now and then you get one that's pushing 26, 27, 28. And so it's not inconceivable to find that record if somebody wants to reel him up, by hand from 500-600 feet. But you got to be in that fishing zone. You got to be in the zone more than you are reeling baits up and down, up and down, up and down. I mean, that's the biggest problem, is keeping baits in that zone. Now, there are trolling motor, the new evolutions in fishing is the trolling motor, I think, for offshore fishing. So that keeps you in the zone longer. The limiting factor right now really is that soft-bodied squid that you're using for deep dropping, and the minute that you see that bait getting pecked, you might as well hit it and bring it to the top. But if you got an artificial that actually works and that will not get torn up on the first, second, third, fourth, fifth bite, you could stay in that zone a lot longer and try to actually find a big, big fish, and that's exciting.
Coming soon to Z-Man near you is the Zenator.
The
Senator.
The Zenator.
The Zenator deep drop
The
bait.
Zenator deep drop bait.
I'll give you the rights to that for free. How about that, Dan? For
There
free.
you go. Sounds like a great idea to me. Let's start working on it.
All right, sounds good. I got some ideas for you.
Hey, Daniel, going into this, I did some research, and as I always try to do, I'm the uneducated one here. My partner over there's got more degrees than the thermometer outside.
It means nothing,
It means,
by the way.
but I have always been under the perception that the chatterbait was what started Z-Man. I'm completely wrong. Help me out with that. Where did Z-Man come about? What?
Yes. So it's kind of an interesting history how things evolved. Originally, we were part of Z-Man stemmed from a company that manufactured industrial products. They had a production line that made silicone tape that they used, I believe, for like a lining in brake pads and for insulation for pipes. And there was a guy, this is going back to the, probably late 80s, early 90s. The company was called RM, and it was located right here, actually in North Charleston. And there was a guy that was a bass fisherman that worked for them and said, hey, if we, color this silicone tape, we can add glitter to it, add pigments to it, we can slit it into strands and, basically rubber band it together and make the best, spinner bait or jig skirt for bass fishing ever. And when I was a kid, I remember getting the Bass Pro catalog and opening up and seeing, RM silicone skirts. It was, kind of the gold standard for skirts. And, this company RM, they sold their skirts to companies like Strike King and a lot of the other big players in the fishing industry. And when that company was sold around 1995, the buyer of the company had no interest in making silicone skirts that could be sold for 5 or 10 cents a piece. So the 7 or 8 folks that were working in the fishing division went across the street, and Mr. Jerry Zucker, the former owner of RM, he bought him a building and the equipment that they needed. And in 1995, Z-Man was born as a silicone skirt company. And it wasn't until around 2006, I believe, when we got involved with the chatterbait, the product that you referenced,
Right.
And started manufacturing and distributing that. And that's really when Z-Man as a consumer brand was born.
Chatterbait was founded in the Charleston area, wasn't it? It was designed and created by some fishermen that were fishing down there. The Davises? Am I correct?
Yeah. So it was Ron Davis, great guy. I just spent a day with him on Lake Murray a few weeks ago. He's actually from Rock Hill, and his son, also Ron, was living at the time in Greenwood. And Mr. Davis came up with this bladed jig, the chatterbait. They named it the chatterbait because it made your teeth chatter when you reeled it in. It vibrated so much. But they were making these things in their garage, and literally overnight, I think this was around 2005 to 2006, a guy won a big tournament down at Lake Okeechobee in Florida. And they went from not being able to sell these things to they were going for over $100 on eBay virtually overnight. And they couldn't keep up building them in their garage. So that's when Z-Man got involved. But it's a pretty cool, it's a homebrewed bait, really cool story. I think, most of us fishermen, I know you guys probably are tinkerers and Stephen, you were just talking about an idea for a deep drop bait. We're all thinking about ideas. We all play around in our garages, messing with fishing tackle, and it's kind of like the dream for any angler, I think, is to develop, $1 million lure like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I know you were getting ready to say something.
No, go ahead.
So moving forward, we keep talking about Stephen keeps talking about how your baits hold up. What is the secret to that? We all know it's Elastec, but how has nobody knocked that off yet? Nobody can knock off your stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are starting to get knocked off a little bit. There are some companies, some factories in China that are making really similar materials, and we're starting to see them pop up on the market. We're kind of unique in that, we completely pioneered this technology. Basically, Elastec is a thermoplastic rubber. We were the first company to manufacture fishing lures out of a thermoplastic rubber. And we do that right here, right here in Ladson, right outside of Charleston. We have our injection molding facility, and it's a really different process that we came up with ourselves. It's a neat product because it's super durable. It's 100% non-toxic. It floats. It has all these other advantages over traditional plastics that tear up easily, and they can, be harmful to fish and harmful to water quality and things like that. So we're really proud of, kind of pioneering that technology. And it's great that you haven't seen the knockoffs, and that was a big part of our big marketing push over the last 10 years, is kind of establishing ZMAN as the leader in these super plastics. And I like to think we've done a pretty good job with it.
Absolutely, and they all float, if I'm not mistaken. They all
That's
float.
the best part.
Yep.
Yeah, which is, it's really a huge advantage. I mean, people think about, floating plastic being advantageous. Obviously you're fishing a top water bait like a frog or a toad where you want it to float. But for me, and I'm primarily an inshore saltwater fisherman, for me, it's a huge advantage when you're dragging something along the bottom, because when you stop that bait, the tail's going to float up, and it has a very lifelike posture, rather than, if you stop a regular plastic bait, then it's going to roll over on its side, just lay flat on the bottom, and it's going to look lifeless.
Yep. Well, a lot of people are under the belief that tackle's designed to catch the fisherman first and the fish second. How do you go about testing? When you come up with new products, like you said, you mentioned, around 10 new products a year. How do you go about testing? Do you have pro staff? Do you let C.A. Richardson go out there and send him some ideas and get them from him? Or what do you do for that when it comes to that? I mean, you pretty much stuck to what you started with, and you're tweaking it. It seems like you come out with some newer plastics every now and then, but everything else pretty much seems to be the same. I mean, what's your model on testing things?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, we lean really heavily on our pro staff, and we're really fortunate to have an awesome pro staff, across, it ranges from guys like C.A. Richardson, who you mentioned. He's got, his Flats Class TV show, but he's also a, guide who's still, he still guides 150 days a year and is always on the water. So, guys like that, or on the freshwater side, we've got probably about a dozen different.
Oh, you got some big names. Oh,
yeah. Touring, bass pros that, and these guys, they, eat, sleep, live, and breathe, fishing with lures. So we lean really heavily on them for new product ideas. That's where most of our ideas come from. We usually, when we're coming up with a new bait, we usually pick one pro and, let them kind of provide all their feedback, all their wants, their needs, their specs. Because we found that if we involve too many people, it's like you get too many cooks in the kitchen. So we like to work with one pro and let that pro kind of start to finish, help develop the bait and test the bait. And don't get me wrong, I love going out there and fishing and testing a new product. And there's nothing more rewarding than catching a fish on something where you've been involved in the design process.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what I think doesn't really matter. It's what these guys that are out there on the water every day think that matters the most.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I've mentioned a little bit about offshore fishing and the Zenator, as English put it a little while ago.
They're going to steal that name.
Yeah, coming to you soon. But I'd like to talk a little bit more about inshore fishing. We got Jason Burton here, one of y'all's pro staff, and I know Jason uses a lot of your stuff on the inshore side, and we were talking a little while ago about what he prefers to do. But I know, informally, or is it formally now, you're called the Flounder Pounder.
Yep.
That has been a name that has been addressed to me.
I gave it to him.
So, Murrells Inlet, Daniel, you probably know there are places. Charleston's sort of known for redfish. Georgetown's sort of known for redfish. Murrells Inlet is a place that has got a different kind of watercolor to it and different kind of bottom to it, and it's really known for flounder and for trout.
Yep.
Yeah. And flounder here. We're the epicenter for flounder. And you've got some baits. Jason, you know better than anybody. You've got some baits that are fantastic for flounder.
Yeah, it's like he was just alluding to. The fact that these baits float. Whether you're working a diesel minnow, slim swim or something like that, you're working these baits on the bottom, and as you kind of pause them and stop them as they float up and lifelike, it just triggers reactions like really, really fast.
Are we trolling here? Are we fan casting? What are we doing mostly what are you doing? I
pretty much anchor up and just power fish. Casting out, working the bait on the bottom, whether it's a slow retrieve, like a paddle tail, or you can, we use, Festivus colors a lot. And
that Festivus seems to be the hot color here, by the way.
I'm telling you, here in Murrells Inlet, that color is it drives everything crazy. We use a lot of trout tricks, which is funny. You throw a trout trick on the bottom, it typically looks like a worm, and the flounder just, they can't stand it.
I've always wondered, Daniel, this about trout tricks. So why? Right. To me,
why?
Well, of course, we have bloodworms. When I was a kid, that's what you fish with at Murrells Inlet was bloodworms. Yep. So, I guess it kind of looks like a bloodworm, but, why did you go to a worm?
I think the reason why is because it works. And, the trout trick is another kind of cool story. There was a guy, Bob Sanders, who was a tournament bass fisherman, who kind of, hung up his bass fishing career and moved down to Edisto and started guiding saltwater. And the trout trick is actually an old discontinued bass profile that he had in his tackle box. And Bob found that for whatever reason, that profile, when you twitch it a certain way, just produced a reaction strike when nothing else would. So, I don't really know what it looks like. I think it, it almost, to me, it's almost like when you pop it twice and let it sink, it's almost like a shrimp, hopping backwards or something like that, or maybe, a more elongated bait fish. But I really just feel like, Bob was right that it's like just triggers some kind of reaction strike. I don't know that they're, really, identifying it as anything in particular, but it just, you pop it a couple times fast and it settles to the bottom and they just thump it.
It's pretty killer on flounder. It
is.
It's got a lot to do with the way it shimmies when it falls.
You think?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And the ribs
I know
on the
this
side and
from the bass fishing world. I for years I used them before it was a trout trick. It was a bass fishing lure similar to this, and it was the shimmy that it had when it sank down, because it sinks level and it's kind of got a gliding action to it. It rocks back and forth as it sinks, and it's just something that just drives them insane.
Well, that's the same theory on the slow pitch jigging nowadays. It's got that. I don't know how they designed those slow pitch jigs, but you put a little back pressure on the slow pitch jig and it runs straight to the bottom. But if you let it free spool, it does that. It lays flat. It lays flat, and it has that sort of shimmy back and forth. Rocks back and forth to the bottom. It's amazing how it is designed. But that motion seems to. Everything eats it up. I don't know why.
They're chasing bait fish, and it looks like a fleeing bait fish or a dying bait fish.
Yeah.
on its last leg, it's an easy target.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think a lot of it goes back to, like we were talking about Festivus, which is one of their most popular colors. It all goes back to color and profile, matching the hatch. If you're throwing, baits in darker water and you're matching what they see, even though it might not look exactly like a shrimp, the fact that it's acting like a shrimp and it's falling, I think, like you, these are reaction bites. It's kind of eat first, think about it second,
that's pretty much the way it is.
Yeah.
What's your number one seller?
Oh, on the freshwater side or the saltwater side?
Both.
Yeah, both.
Let's go overall.
Both? Yeah. Well, so overall, our number one selling soft plastic bait, the original chatterbait, it's a
Right.
$5.79 retail. You'll find it in every Walmart or Dick's Sporting Goods or Bass Pro Shops. That's our number one seller.
Yeah.
But in terms of soft plastics, our number one seller is hands down the Finesse TRD, which is a little 2.75 inch stick bait. It's completely mind boggling to me that this thing has done. I mean,
hey, you're telling me I'm one of the first ones here to start fishing with it. I was like, I'm gonna try it. And now Jason and them, I'm getting off subject they're using it to saltwater.
Yeah, we've really started using that in saltwater as well.
Yeah, it flat out catches fish. I mean, I just never expected it to catch on like it does. But, I mean, we sell more of those Finesse TRDs, primarily for bass fishing, but we sell them around the world. I mean, in Europe, they use them for perch fishing. It's a great saltwater bait. When it, about a month from now, when the water cools down, if it finally ever cools down, I think it was 68 degrees on Saturday when I went out. But, when the water drops down into the 50s and those redfish get, a little bit sluggish and picky and finicky, they'll eat that little Finesse TRD when they won't hit anything else. So that's been a huge seller for us, and it's kind of a category that we pioneered. It's been pretty neat to see it take off.
It's a great smallmouth bait too, isn't it?
It's a great everything bait.
Everything,
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
it's a Ned
it was actually
bait.
developed. Yeah, Ned rig. It was developed for smallmouth bass. The guy that helped me develop that was he spends the summers at Lake of the Woods in Canada.
Yep.
A guy named Drew Reese, who's become a really good friend of mine, and he was cutting our baits up to make this little Finesse TRD, and he had his own molds made to make jig heads for them, and he was, tying these little wire keepers on with, like you'd tie a fly, and I'd never even met the guy. This is, 8 or 9 years ago. He dragged Jonathan and I up to Lake of the Woods to go fishing with us so he could show us, how well this stuff worked. And we were absolutely floored. So it started as a smallmouth bass thing, but it's turned into an everything bait.
Oh, yeah. Most people rig it in that freshwater with spot jig, right? Spot remover jig, or is that how they fish it?
Yeah, we make a little, it's called a Finesse Shrooms jig head. Mm-hmm. It's even smaller than that. It's got like a size 1 or 2 hook, and now we make 7 or 8 different jig head variations with, some of them have weed guards, or some of them have a extra wide gap hook, or some of them have a little bit stronger hook, and have kind of created a whole system out of it.
So this Finesse TRD, it looks like a trout trick that's been bitten in half. Is basically what it looks like. And I'm a little bit mad at myself because I've seen this on the end of my hook a few times. After
took it off and threw it away.
And I took it off and threw it away. Right, and I should have just kept fishing with it. It's
amazing.
Like
a Cinco that somebody chopped right in half, and you use both ends of it. But now you don't have to. With those, it just lasts forever.
How do you rig this? Well, let's start with inshore fishing, then we'll go to freshwater. How do you rig this thing, Jason?
Like he's talking about, typically on the TRDs, I'm either using what's called a Ned locks, which is their more modified version, but the generic is the mushroom. Now, what the mushroom hook does is it basically stands straight up and down. So when you drop it, the mushroom sits straight up and down, and because the Elazotech floats, it gives you the appearance of the bait straight up and down. So when you either hop it, like twitch, pause, or you can just sit there and kind of shake it, and that quivering effect of that wounded bait fish a lot of times draws.
So it's a jig head that, basically with a mushroom on the end?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Very flat. It is designed to sit flat on the bottom and present a vertical type target. But
gotcha.
We've been using those. Like he made reference in the wintertime when it's cold. That Finesse style fishing is phenomenal. Right before we went on the air and started talking, we were just talking about these new, salty Ned rigs.
Yeah.
And I've just started using those, and I don't want to show anybody.
All right, what? So you don't want to talk about it?
I'll talk about it.
Show
So
anybody.
what's a salty Ned rig?
No, he wants to talk about it.
Yeah, come on.
No, I'm happy to talk
That's
about
why
it.
you got that box of Z-Man tackle at the house. Come on, talk about it.
I'm looking at the salty Ned Shrimp Z right now.
That is exactly what we've been using. We've been using that, which is the same concept
Okay.
as the TRD. It's just now you've got something with little legs on it that actually has the shrimp profile.
Right.
And it's one of those things, as a fisherman, we want an advantage.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
the problem is when you have 8 or 9 boats beside you and they're all top-notch guides, when you start catching fish, the first thing they want to do is, hey, what's on your rod? So I had to
And you're talking about little teeny hooks.
dude, you're talking about 2.5-inch profile baits. I mean, we went up to Little River with Captain Chris Osmond, and the first time I tried those, we were using these, 10-pound braid, very, very light action rods, and we were sight fishing 21 to 23-inch redfish. And because they were targeting those little shrimp on the bank, we literally couldn't get them off of it. It was awesome.
That's awesome. All right, Tony.
Same thing. It's an open style hook. It's they call it a Ned rig, and it is took the world by storm. And it's what's amazing about it, that little bait right there probably accounts for half of the big fish caught in the bass world.
Yep.
And what is this a time of year? Is this any time of year?
It's any time of the year bait. I like it in the fall and in the winter months. For some reason or other, that subtle profile, big fish just eat it. And I'm not talking about 2.5. I'm talking about 8, 9, 10-pound bass eat that little 2.5-inch profile bait.
Yep.
And it's a open wire hook. It's a light wire hook. And I use the ones with the weed guards on it. They make them now with a double weed guard. Some of them's plastic, some of them's wire.
Yeah.
It's whatever your preference is for your situation, but man, it's just outstanding.
And how are you fishing it? The same way?
Same way, just spinning rod, 8, 10-pound braid, fluorocarbon leader. Fish it just like a worm on the bottom. Hop it, slow drag
Comes
it.
right through treetops, comes right through whatever.
And do you need to fish, since it's such a low profile bait, finesse fish, do you need to fish it out of the current? I mean, do you need to get out of the fast water or what?
No.
Good question.
You can fish it anywhere, around structure, water breaks, in weeds, anything. I haven't seen a situation yet where you can't fish that little bait and get bit.
That's amazing.
I'll tell you what, though, 2 years ago, Daniel, Tony over here got me hooked on the baby goats.
Oh, God.
And,
yeah.
And rigging them up on chatterbaits, rigging them up for our soft baits on chatterbaits, and the micro chatterbaits in particular. And it was unbelievable, the catch count numbers, the numbers that went up. I mean, you caught big fish on them because you catch big fish, period. But the way I could go through White's Creek and just put that on and go the whole way through White's Creek and catch bass all day long.
Yep. I'm a big crossover guy. I use one bait for 20 different things. And the goat, to me, I don't know who designed the goat, but I'd like to shake their hand. It
Might be this guy. What are you talking
Might
about?
be Daniel.
Might be Daniel.
I was involved with that. I worked on that with one of our pros down in Alabama, a guy named Joey Nania. And he fishes the Bassmaster Opens and guides when he's not, fishing those. That's 9 tournaments now that he travels around the country to fish. But, he's married and has a few young kids and is on the water every day one way or another. And he just, like you said, he just wanted something that was super versatile, something he could flip, something that he could Carolina rig, something that he could Texas rig, something that he could use on a swim jig or a finesse jig or a chatterbait. And that's kind of how the goat was born. It's just a simple profile with, twin tails that really kick. You can fish it top to bottom. I've used it, even in saltwater. You fish it, weightless, and you can fish it on top like you would a toad, or, like I said, you can drag it on the bottom. It works top to bottom. So it's just one of those, pretty basic and simple profiles that, has a tremendous amount of applications. I think it's probably our most versatile bait, actually. I know C.A. Richardson, one of our saltwater guys, when he goes down to Louisiana and he's sight fishing redfish in the ponds down there, that's the bait he ties on. So it's just, super versatile.
That's exactly where I was going with that. I tell anybody that don't know, I'll let the secret out. Get you a 5/0 flipping hook and go weightless. That's the best buzz frog you'll ever throw in your life. Just that simple. It is amazing how far I've seen redfish come to get that lure coming across the top of the water. It is just remarkable.
Yep.
And same thing with bass. I use it for punching. I use it for flipping. I use it on my chatterbait. I use it on the back of a jig. I use it as a trailer from a spinnerbait, trailer from a buzzbait. I use it weedless just as a buzz frog. I use it as a twitch bait on top because it floats. It don't sink. So it has so many different things that can be done with it. And it has just been my go-to bait now since I laid hands on it a year and a half ago. And I have caught so many different species on it. I can't wait to go when I get out of here. Y'all got me excited about fishing today.
That's awesome. That's exactly what we set out to do with that bait. So I'm glad to hear that you're using it all those different ways that we intended it to be used. So thank you.
All right, here we go.
Thank you.
Here it comes.
Stevens Holden, your latest, greatest, I think, in my personal opinion, and this is going from videos that we watched last week, and this is even before. This is when I said I'm getting Steven and we're getting Z-Man on, but Stevens Holden, your latest and greatest bait that I think is absolutely just ingenious how y'all came up with it and how it runs. I want you to guess which one he's holding right now.
I bet he's holding a Hellraiser.
Yeah, you ruined it. Yeah, no, I'm holding a Hellraiser, 5/8 ounce. Or do these come in different sizes?
That's the one size right now.
Okay.
I'm actually working on a couple of different sizes, but
All right, the Hellraiser, Raizer, of course. And, God, I don't even know how to describe this
I would
thing.
just love to hear how they came up with this because it doesn't look like anything on the market. There's nothing it looks like.
It looks like
needlefish with an attitude.
It looks like an anteater to me, is what it
is. It is a funny looking bait, and to see it in the package doesn't do it justice until you see it in the water. You just can't understand what that bait does. Now that's one that I wish that I could take credit for. I wish that we could take credit for that one here at Z-Man, but we're talking a little while ago about Ron Davis, who invented the chatterbait, and this is another one of his great invention.
No doubt. What did he do?
Yeah.
How did he come up with this? He took a stick bait. He obviously took the blade, tried it on the back. I mean, who comes up with this idea? And then you attach to a bait halfway down the bait.
We're tinkerers. That's what we do. I've been building lures since I was 12 years old. That's just what we do. We want to change it and look for the next great thing.
Well, let's describe what it is, first of all. So, let's get Daniel to describe it.
Yeah, you describe it.
Daniel, describe it to us.
So I've got one sitting right here as well. I'm holding it in my hand right now. And I mean, it is it almost looks like the body almost looks like a pencil popper.
Yep.
It's got this weird, kind of angled nose to it. And the line tie is on the bottom of the bait, about a third of the way from the nose. So it kind of looks like some other, like a long, slender, hard bait. Then on the back of it, you got this wire coming out of the tail, and there's a blade. A stainless blade with a weight on the bottom attached to it. And the way that this thing works is when you reel it through the water, the nose kind of pops up out of the water, and the blade, really makes this bait work. So the blade oscillates back and forth. The blade is subsurface. The nose of the bait cuts above the surface, and the nose of the bait just goes back and forth. It spits. It's kind of like a walking topwater plug that you don't have to walk.
You don't have to walk.
You don't have to walk the dog on it.
All you have to do is reel it. It's kind of, I tell people it's kind of like a cross between walking topwater bait and a buzz bait. It's a little bit like a buzz bait in that it's a topwater bait that doesn't float, and you have to, reel it to get it going. But it's more like the action is more like a walking bait. It just actually what Mr. Davis called it originally was the auto walk, because it walks automatically. We had to put a Z in the name, and you can't put a Z in auto walk, so that's why we called it the Hell Raiser.
Yeah.
Right. So the first thing I said when I saw it was, it looks like great trout bait. And then somebody said, "Oh, that's a great redfish bait." And then somebody said, "Oh, I'm going to use that for bass."
Yeah.
What do you what if you said, this bait is for? What would you say is for?
Yeah, so I think primarily it's a bass bait.
Yeah.
I think that's what most people are going to use it for when we've, presented it to our, big retailers and our smaller retailers. That's where they kind of see it fitting in. A few years ago, there was a bait that came out called the Whopper Plopper.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a topwater bait that's kind of got it's almost like a, plastic one blade propeller on the back. And that's kind of the closest thing that I can liken this to is the Whopper Plopper, which was a huge bass bait, but kind of like the Whopper Plopper, it works for everything. I mean, I've caught trout on it. I haven't caught redfish on it yet because I haven't really fished it for reds, but I was up with the Davises at Lake Murray a few weeks ago, and we were catching stripers that were schooling up there on it. So it's great for schooling fish. Up north, I mean, we've got people catching smallmouth and pike on it. We're looking at doing a bigger version for muskie and, big saltwater fish. So it really is an everything bait, but I think primarily it's going to be a bass bait.
I'm going to use it for dolphin this year when the dolphin are schooled up.
Got a king mackerel.
That's what I was thinking. Come up with a bigger one. I know.
Come up with like an 8-inch. Come up with like an 8-inch to throw when the dolphin are schooled up. I guarantee you they'll eat.
And they'll hammer it. I've even thought about one thing I've thought about is I was wondering how this thing would troll, because or maybe eventually we'll even make a trolling version, because when you see it in the water, one thing it kind of reminds me of is like a bird, like you would troll as a teaser, or ahead of a trailing lure. It almost kind of looks like that, so it would probably make a really cool offshore bait if you could
it would work.
do it right.
I mean, the way, if the head stays out of the water, if you could figure out how to design one with the head where the head still stays out of the water, pulling at 6 or 7 knots, and it would look like just like a flying fish skirting across the top.
Flying fish skirting. That's what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm. When I first seen it, the first thing I thought of is it looked like a sailfish when it comes up and it's fighting and it's shaking his head back and forth. That's exactly what it looks like when it comes across the water.
Yeah, kind of like that bill going.
Yep.
Kind of a sailfish chasing a bait on top. I could see that for sure.
Some of those. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to add, one really cool thing about this bait too is, the number one issue when you're fishing any topwater bait is, you miss a bunch of fish, right? Because, I mean, a lot of times the fish are, hitting at the, they're really striking at the splash rather than the bait. The bait's floating on top. The way this bait sits at kind of like a 45-degree angle, and it's got this flashy blade in the back and this feathered hook, it gives a really good strike target for the fish that's actually subsurface, so you get a much better hookup ratio. And that's another reason why
that makes a lot of sense.
Being like a great trolling bait or something where you've got this splash on top, but there's still something for the fish to strike at underwater.
It's definitely a good looking bait. On the front of brand new baits, I think I heard you make reference earlier that it was your baby. Can you talk a little bit about the new kicker crabs?
Yeah. That's one that's been kind of kicking around in my head for years.
No pun intended.
Actually, I think I did intend
that. Probably where you got the name from.
So I've been thinking about that for doing something like a sideways swimming crab for years, because I'm sure all of y'all have spent time on the water, and you look down in the water and there's a crab
that's
swimming by the boat.
Yep, that's how they
sideways swim. And they've got this claw kind of trailing behind them, kind of waving around. And I was thinking about it, and I've just never been able to find a crab lure that was angler friendly. There's some awesome, like super realistic crab lures, but you can't cast them and retrieve them. You just cast them out and like let them sit on the bottom basically, which is fine if you're, sight fishing, but for any other style of fishing, it's, just very difficult to fish. And most people that are fishing artificials like, having a paddle tail and a jig head, something that they can, a moving bait that they can cover water with. So that's kind of where this thing was born. It's a sideways swimming crab that its trailing claw has a paddle tail. So you can fish it on a jig head or a weighted swim bait hook, and you can kind of roll it just under the surface. You can hop it on the bottom. It looks like just a little crab scurrying away. Or where I've done really well with it is in the grass for tailing redfish. I mean, I don't think I've had one.
Now that's fun.
Turn it down yet. Yeah, I mean they just the thing about a crab bait with redfish is they've got those big crushers in the back of their throat. So anything that resembles a crab, it's gonna go straight back to those crushers. So even if you're just barely moving this thing on the bottom, they look at this profile and they think crab, and they just thump the snot out of it. So it's an aggressive strike. It's a fun bait to fish for that reason, and one we're really excited about, and a lot of people are excited about it because at our ICAST trade show this summer, it's the Big Fishing Industry Trade Show. It actually got voted the best new saltwater soft lure, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was the first time I got exposed to it. We were at ICAST, and as soon as we got back, wanted to get that in our hands, and we fished with it, and it is phenomenal. Now, the only problem we've had is it's became popular so quick. It's kind of hard to find them. They sell out as soon as the local bait and tackle shops get them. It's like they're gone.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's good to hear. Good to hear they're selling. And I actually walked back in the plant first thing this morning, and we're actually running some kicker crabs today. So
Nice.
All right,
got plenty of them, and
we need to get some.
How many colors do you have available in the kicker crabs?
We did 8 colors, mostly kind of some natural colors, 1 or 2 kind of off the wall colors, one with a little chartreuse in it, just something bright for muddy water. But, mostly the, kind of your more natural crabby looking, dark back, lighter belly kind of colors.
We're going to have to get Tony over here to try it on the freshwater. I bet you it would really work.
Oh, I bet for
freshwater.
those kind of tidal bass, I bet it would work.
Oh,
great.
you got to think about it. Our banks are covered with nothing but fiddler crabs.
Oh yeah,
Exactly.
the Georgetown bass would eat
You
that
better
thing
know it.
alive.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guarantee you they would.
covered with fiddler crabs.
I love fishing
And those-
crabs
those-
for
those
cobia.
blue-
Yes.
Yeah, those blue crabs go pretty
Love it.
far up the river too.
Yes.
Yeah, they do. They do. I was just saying, I love fishing crabs for cobia. If you can, if you got crabs and you got cobia, that's a combination. That's a winning
I
combination.
guarantee you this lure would work.
Oh,
If you
are
put-
they big enough for cobia?
How big
Yes,
are
sir?
they?
I mean, they're not gigantic, but if you've ever cleaned a cobia,
Yeah.
have you seen how many of those little past crabs and
small.
little purple ones that they have?
Yeah.
They're not always eating
Yeah.
crab cake style crabs. So
Right.
I'm with you. I'm excited. By the time I got them, most of our cobia run here May and June, and that was the first thing I thought of. I said, man, if I throw that and do a figure 8 on top, I bet he's going to wet me. He's going to hit it so hard.
There's a bunch of cobia moving back the other way right now.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're
The
right.
last 2 dives I've made, I've seen giant cobia. So they're moving the other direction.
Well, we caught one and lost one 2 weeks ago in the king term. Caught one over 40 and then lost another one. That was inshore though.
Yeah.
How about the jackhammer bait? What's the difference? What's the difference in a jack? Help me out with this. And I love Brett Height and Davey Height, by the way. But what is the difference in the jackhammer and the normal? What do you call it? The
Normal chatterbait.
the normal
His original
chatterbait,
Yeah. Yeah. So
Components.
the
Huh?
jackhammer is basically the hot rod of chatterbaits. It's got just top of the line components. It's a Japanese quality bait. We actually partnered with a company called Evergreen International. That's a Japanese company to make that bait. They do really high end stuff. The Japanese, are really well known for making super high end baits. So it's just, better components. It's got like a Gamakatsu flipping hook. It's got a double wire trailer keeper. The skirts are hand tied in like 5 different layers. So a lot of work goes into that. Just intricate paint schemes. Even the little snap that's on the blade is, a really high-end Japanese snap. The components are great. They hold up better. Sharper hooks. The skirts flare out better and have, more detailed color schemes. All that stuff is great, but the big difference, what people like about it the most, is it starts vibrating immediately. The second you turn the reel handle, it starts vibrating. So as soon as you start that retrieve, you're not going to waste an inch of your retrieve, which, for these tournament bass guys that have, hundreds of $1,000s on the line, they have to make, every second of every day count. That's a huge advantage right there. And it's got a little bit different sound profile just because the way the blade hits the head. And for whatever reason, I mean, y'all know just from fishing, I mean, there's certain baits that, for whatever reason, I mean, offshore, a cedar plug or a blue and white islander or a DOA shrimp. I mean, there's, certain baits that just work, and the jackhammer is one of those baits that just works.
It's a different sound with the blade hitting against that tungsten head than it is the original lead heads that was on the original chatterbait. It's something different. It's like going to a one knocker, vibrating bait instead of your original rattle trap. And they come out with the Strike King versions of them, and they did a one knocker weight system in it instead of a bunch of little BBs. So it's just a different sound totally than a regular chatterbait.
Makes sense.
And the vibration, like you said, it's immediate. You don't have to pop the end of the rod and reel it 3 or 4 inches before the blade really kicks in and starts vibrating. It's immediate. First turn of the handle, it's trying to shake the tip off your rod.
All right, I've got a question for the group before we end this. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even realize we're at 50 minutes.
We're already in. Wow.
We're already at 50.
They're going to have to do a part 2.
Yep.
53 minutes, which is great. But a question for the group. Regardless of what you're fishing for, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where you're fishing. Doesn't matter. One bait you get to take with you for the next, 30 days. One bait. What bait's it going to be? And I'm going to start with Capt.
Oh, I'm going, I don't know. After talking more and more and learning more and more, I'm going with a trout trick.
Trout trick, huh?
I'm going with a trout trick.
All right, I like that answer.
I'm going with a trout trick. It just seems like I can do. Now, I mean, are we talking I can go to freshwater or saltwater and fish with it?
Doesn't matter what it is. You get one bait to use for the next 30 days.
I'm going with a trout trick. I should have said Ned rig. I'm going with trout trick, though.
All right, Jason?
Should have gone with the turd.
I mean, if you're talking about everything.
You get one bait for 30 days. Doesn't matter.
Oh, he's going crab. What am I?
No, I'm not. I mean, crab's a great bait. Don't get me wrong, but the diesel minnow mimics everything.
Yep.
You're mimicking, a glass minnow, a mud minnow, a mullet minnow. I'm going to the river, a shad. And power fishing, I love power fishing, so I would say that. The fact that I can, cast and retrieve and cover as much water as possible, I think that's successful in freshwater, saltwater, the pond behind your house, or the lakes, and rivers. So I would take the diesel minnow.
All right, Tony. Go ahead. I know it's going to be chatterbait.
Oh, no.
What?
No, no,
There
sir.
you go.
Hands down, goat.
Oh, the goat.
Well, we knew that from
The
him.
goat,
He
not
talked highly of it.
the baby
regular.
goat, not the billy goat, the goat.
Yep, the goat.
I can fish it on a jig head. I can fish for flounder, redfish, trout, bass. I can fish it 100 different ways.
I forgot.
Hands down, the goat.
All right,
Daniel?
Daniel.
Cheated.
Daniel, what you got?
What's yours, Daniel? Come on.
My answer is going to be pretty similar to Jason's. I got to go with our 3-inch minnows, which is just a little bit smaller profile than our diesel minnows, and I've got a little bit of advantage here. I call that my stranded on a desert island bait, because if I'm stranded on a desert island, I know I need to eat. That's the bait I'm going to choose. But I look at our sales, not just in the United States for fresh and saltwater, but all around the world, places like Australia and Europe and South America, South Africa, and we sell that 3-inch minnows everywhere. So that thing's just a fish catcher. It's pretty small profile, great action, catches fish fresh or salt.
It works so good on the back of a micro chatterbait. Oh my Lord!
Yep.
It complements a lot of other baits. I mean, it really does.
Yes.
We
All right,
them-
Stephen.
Me? All right. I hate finesse fishing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm one of these
You
guys.
can look at him and
He
tell.
doesn't strike me as a finesse.
He
fisher.
walked right out of the gym and came downstairs
Yeah,
to
let
do
me power
that, so.
fish.
I'm not a finesse fisher. I prefer. I'm like a go big or go home kind of guy, and so I'm gonna go with a big. Like, I don't know. There's an easy. Do we have an easy minnow? No, not that.
Not
one.
quite that.
I wouldn't go with that one. I'd go with like a electric chicken colored big easy minnow.
Yep. Can't go wrong. That's just that electric chicken is a South Carolina state bird. Did y'all
That
know
is.
that?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do y'all use the electric chicken color, or do you call it something else? That color.
I use
chartreuse.
electric
no.
chicken.
Yeah, we call
They
it
use the
electric
color.
chicken.
You do
It's
call it
one of
electric
one of
chicken.
our best sellers. Yeah.
I couldn't remember, but I mean that for years when I lived in Allendale on the waterway down there. For years, electric chicken was my color. It was just my go-to color.
I'm a chicken on a chain kind of guy,
See,
or a
now we
fried
talking.
chicken kind of guy.
Yep, and so a big swim, some kind of a big bait, big soft plastic bait. But
That sparks a great question. I have a question. Who comes up with the names of these? And all the names are
Yeah, Daniel,
unique,
come on.
the color
phenomenal. And the newer names, the level of creativity, when you hear the name, you don't forget.
new money.
That's the most fun part, is coming up with the names, the color names. We put a lot of time and effort into that. It's kind of funny, just quick story. I know we're running short on
No,
time.
you're good.
but
Don't worry about time.
Yeah, you're good.
You're good.
For a while, remember that show American Gladiators?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It used to I don't know what it came, ESPN or something like that.
Yeah.
So we had a formula for naming baits where we would take an American Gladiator name,
That is awesome.
pair it with whatever the bait is, whatever it mimics, and then add a Z to the end of it. So that's how we came up with diesel minnows, turbo craws.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a few others.
That is
so we
awesome.
I think we used about all the good American Gladiator names. So it's kind of funny, like, a lot of times it'll just be like an aha moment. Or one time I had one of our pro staffers, Brian Latimer, called me at about 11:30 at night. And I answered the phone, and, because it's rare for Brian to call me late at night. And I answered the phone. I was like, Brian, everything okay? He said, yeah, I just had the best idea for a color name ever. Yoga pants. We got to make a bait called Yoga
Yeah.
And you did.
Pants. and we did. So
Yeah.
But
that's the fun part.
That's awesome, though. I mean, like I said, obviously I do a lot of fishing, but, for newer fishermen and stuff, if you told somebody, hey, go get beer run. They're, what? Go to the shop and get the color beer
run.
They're not going to forget that. If you say, oh, go get, a natural or pearl or, names that have been around forever, they're going to go, okay. They're like, beer run? Yeah. Go get fried chicken or something like that. Like, you don't forget that. And it's super creative, and I think it's a genius idea.
So you gotta tell me now. Do you have a list of names, color names, that you decided were too risque or X-rated that you cannot that you could not use on a package? Because I got some for you.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
excellent.
There have been a number that have been nixed, sometimes even at the very last minute.
I'd love to hear one.
Oh yeah, and they're like they're giving you heartburn because it's so good, but you can't
know it,
use
but you can't do it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yep. The ones that we haven't been able to use are even better than the ones that we have.
Oh yeah,
I can imagine.
That's usually the way it is.
Oh, I can imagine that, buddy.
Well, I got another question for you, and I know a lot of people's going to want to hear the answer to this. Coming from the bass fishing side of it, and there may be already, and I just haven't had the brains to find it. Is there a color dye that will adhere to ZMAN?
Yep.
Or is there one in the making in
Great
the
question.
future?
Great question.
That's a really good question, and there there isn't one yet, but there is one in the works. And actually,
there you go.
I was playing around with it over the weekend. It worked really well. This is kind of, I don't know, probably our 10th different version of it, trying to get something that adheres well, that dries quickly. So great question, and it's something that hopefully we'll be coming out with in the next 6 or 8 months.
Oh, thank you so much. That is so awesome. I'm a bass fisherman, and you know bass fishermen. We can't throw a worm without dipping the tail and
they got to dip
and glow. I mean, it's just a natural thing. So, and that's been my only thing with the Elastex, that I have not been able to find anything that will stick to the doggone thing. So that's good to hear, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. This was
man,
not only educational but entertaining.
Yeah, we could keep going.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
It was fun.
Definitely. What's the website for ZMAN? Let's send everybody there, because I tell you, the one really cool thing is all the videos you have. We've talked about all these baits and mentioned them. There are links on there to go watch a lot of these videos about these baits. What is that? ZMANfishing.com?
Yeah. Yep, sure. It's ZMANfishing.com. We also have a ZMAN Fishing TV YouTube channel that's got all those videos on it, easy to find, and some cool stuff, tip videos, videos about our pros, all that kind of stuff. So check it out.
We'll do it, and we'll share that all that information. And thank you so much for taking the time, Daniel. It's a great time talking to you, brother.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
All right, buddy. Tight lines. All right, folks. Well, that's been another great episode. Thank you, too, for joining in. It's fun to talk to people behind products that we love. Fun. Good call.
It was great.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It's fun to hear how some of them is thought of and where they originated from and the idea behind it.
Now we got him off the phone, and I do want to ask one question. You see me keep picking this Hercules up. That is for a trailer hook only, or is that for an underspin?
That is for the option to put a split ring treble hook on it.
Okay, split ring treble on the bottom? Okay. Well, listen, go check out all their products, man. They got some incredible products, and from what you listen to right there, you understand all the research that goes into them. You can't go wrong with Z-Man Fishing. And another great product is all the products that we have. Southern Anglers Radio Show on Saturday mornings. We also have Trilogy Outdoors magazine, by the way, in case y'all didn't know. It's on the racks. Go get it right now.
Some great articles this month.
Yeah, really good articles. Good job, Stephen. TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com. You can find out all that information. And, hey, we're going to be back next week. Who knows what we're going to talk about? Hopefully some ballistics. I'm asking Stephen. I got some questions about ballistics, so
we can do that.
We might try to get some experts in here. I know you know a couple, including your dad. Get them in here and let's talk some ballistics. But no matter what, next week, we'll be back. Talking fins, fur, and feathers here on Trilogy Outdoors.
Trilogy Outdoors Podcast is a product of Trilogy Outdoors Media. All views and opinions of our hosts and guests are not necessarily those of our sponsors. Trilogy Outdoors is produced and edited by Trilogy Outdoors Media. Be sure to follow us on all the podcast platforms as well as our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And also, don't forget our other brands, Southern Anglers Radio Show and Walk 'Em All Outdoor Magazine. To find more information, visit TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com. And remember, if it's anything dealing with fins, fur, and feathers, you're going to find it right here on Trilogy Outdoors.